Hey, what's going on, guys? This is Alex Cook, and welcome to my first podcast. So, this is something that's been in the works for a while and finally had a chance to get it done. So, I'm going to be working on getting on to all the main podcast platforms. If there's one that I missed, let me know. But one of the main reasons why I want to do this is I want to get away from just relying on YouTube. I could do a whole show on this just itself, but YouTube just isn't what it used to be. It's not as easy to grow on YouTube anymore. You almost have to make clickbait, and that's not what I'm about. So this lets me go into more long form conversations. Might have some guests on the show as we go on. It lets me get into more long form conversations that isn't just like some smart ass Twitter comment and isn't just YouTube or Instagram clickbait. Like that stuff's great sometimes. It's funny, but that's not really what I do. I'm trying to do more deep dive into some serious topics. So what I want to talk about in this podcast. And by the way, I will continue to post on YouTube. I'll keep posting there as long as they let me. And I'm going to expand to other platforms as well. But what I want to talk about in this is going to be a military podcast. So I talked a little bit before on why I left finance to join the military. And originally, I made a thread on Wall Street Oasis where I was talking about this. Okay, so Wall Street Oasis, it's a forum that is kind of like peer-to-peer advice for people working in the finance industry. So made some content talking about that, and I thought it might get a few clicks, like people might have a little interest in it, but I didn't realize just kind of how much the interest was. And since I posted that, and since I had a YouTube video that was kind of like a follow-up to it, I had a number of people reach out to me, just unsolicited on LinkedIn, that had some of the same thoughts. And some of these guys are at some like pretty legit firms. Like they were probably making more. No, they definitely were making more than I was before I joined the military. So you could say arguably they were in a better position than I was. So from much of these phone calls, there were some common themes. So that's what I want to talk about in this podcast, just what I got from some of these conversations. And maybe if you're thinking about maybe going on this path, leaving a so-called normal job to make the jump to the armed forces, maybe some things for you to consider. And look, I'm not trying to sell anybody one way or another. I can just tell you about what the military has done for me, why I really enjoy this experience, and just some things to think about for yourself, because it is a big life decision. So, look, the main thing is, I think from a bunch of these phone calls, there wasn't really anything I told these guys that they couldn't have found out really on their own, but they just wanted someone to tell them that this is normal. Okay, so honestly, in hindsight, I don't think what I did even really was that extreme. I joined the armed forces, true. Okay, I left a so-called normal job, true. But there's millions of people that are veterans in the U.S. Like there's millions of people that went through this path at some point in their life. Maybe they made a whole career out of it. Maybe they just did a stint. But I really don't think in hindsight what I did was really that extreme. Now, I was, maybe one out of my peer group that did this. But, well, in the process, I ended up developing a new peer group too. I'll talk about that. But look, I mean, who is even really to say like what is a normal life or not? So, I mean, what kind of life are you trying to live? Are you trying to do just what everybody else in an upper middle class community does, where they go to good college, then IB or management consulting, and then MBA, and then PE or VC? I mean, just that sort of meme path from the early 2010s. I mean, it's not necessarily the path anymore, but that was sort of like the meme path from all the finance blogs back when blogging was a bit more of a thing. I mean, you could follow that path, and look, I do find finance interesting, but I think some people want to just a bit more, a bit more out of life. And I think what would happen if I didn't join the military? Well, I probably would have bought slightly more Amazon products. I probably would have watched a few more Netflix shows, and I still would be in my kind of square, boxy, like Amelie apartment, which, in any city, they all look almost exactly the same, like those upper middle class, like, Amelie or, Simon Property Group apartments. Cool story. I mean, maybe for some people that's great, but I think for others, they want something a bit more. So, why is it that I think finance people might have an interest in the military? Because what I notice is that the military is actually really well represented on Wall Street. Why I think that might be the case is it tends to attract a crowd that's competitive. Okay, well, like we want to make things happen and not just watch it on TV. We want our work to have some kind of meaning to it. And I think people got into finance because they wanted the potential to work on big deals. So maybe then they left that to consider the military because, well, they didn't. They didn't get to work on those big deals. Like they were promised, like, Ari Gold from Entourage, or they were promised, Gordon Gekko. Instead, what they got was The Office. Okay, I don't really watch a whole lot of TV, so maybe it's a great show. But point being is, you were expecting one kind of like badass business like lifestyle, and then what you got is filling out Excel sheets at 11 o'clock at night because your boss couldn't make a decision, because you had endless meetings when an email could have just been enough. And there you are. And you probably spent actually most of the day just sitting around on your computer doing nothing, just waiting for guidance. And then finally you get the guidance at like 6 o'clock at night when everyone else is leaving. So now you're stuck there working on this Excel sheet. And you thought you were going to be Ari Gold, or you thought you were going to be Gordon Gekko. But instead, here you are plugging away in your Excel, making sure all the V lookups and the index matches line up. And yeah, you are not feeling like a boss right now. You are not feeling like a boss right now. So you start thinking, well, what else might I have an interest in? And for me, that's kind of that was kind of a point where I started thinking, well, what else have I an interest in? And defense issues have always been something that I found interesting. I actually met with a recruiter all the way back in high school. Didn't pull the trigger for a number of reasons. I'll talk about that in a little bit. But yeah, I think people that go into finance and go into the military, they kind of have same sort of core values in a way of they want their work to have some kind of meaning to it. And, I felt like, just speaking for myself, the work that I was doing in finance at the time, it just wasn't there. Now, when I move on, because I am going to be getting out of the military at some point, I want to do something maybe a bit different than what I was doing beforehand. And who knows, maybe you find your satisfaction from doing something else. Maybe to you a job's just a job, but there's maybe like a charity group or something, some kind of like civic group that you're involved in. That's how you get your satisfaction. That's fine too. But yeah, I mean, what I like about the military is, look, the whole military is not the Jocko podcast. Like the whole military is not Call of Duty, but like at least I did some stuff that I'm proud of. Like, at least I got some cool experiences out of it. Really made some lifelong friendships from it and did some stuff that I just would not have done elsewhere. Like, I got to jump out of a helicopter in air assault school. I got to blow up a lot of stuff with C4. I got to, they're just crazy stuff. Like, I've bailed people out of jail. I don't recommend jail. Just adult to adult conversation. I wouldn't recommend going to jail. Serious stuff too, like, visiting people in the hospital. So, these are things that just, I was not getting these kind of experiences, like leadership. Like I was always like in an individual contributor role working in finance. And now I have people that I'm responsible for, and it's a different kind of feeling. So yeah, I mean, you could stay in finance if it's what you like, but I would say just kind of think, what is it you want to get out of life? And are you doing this because it's something you really like, or are you doing this because it's just sort of the default path ahead of you? And look, you might be the only one out of your peer group that has this interest, but like you're not the only one. I mean, just from the amount of messages I gotten, like you are not the only one on this topic. I definitely wasn't the only one. And when you make the jump, you're going to meet a new peer group too. Like you're going to make friends in the military. Like I've made friends that are definitely going to be lifelong friends that I wouldn't have met otherwise. So like you will make a new peer group, and you can always go back to finance later. Like there is a really big veterans network on Wall Street. Pretty much any MBA program has a veterans and business club. So that will always be there. But for me, I joined at age 29. I really wish I would have joined sooner, actually, through ROTC or something like that. I joined at age 29 because I'd rather join age 29 than age 30 or 31. So like there's a saying, like the best time to start is like 10 years ago. The second best time is right now. I was single, didn't have any kids. So, and at some point that's going to change. So it was just easier for me to do it sooner rather than later. And I wish I didn't even sooner too, because I wanted to get a deployment in. That didn't happen. That's one thing I was a little salty about. And earlier on in the 2010s, 2000s. Everybody was getting deployments. I want to talk about that too. Is I think what the GWAT generation, the Global War on Terror generation, did really is incredible. Like I think really the whole kids or soft spiel, like I think that's like a boomer meme. Like it's. I mean, I'm going to offend some people from this, but I mean, let's be serious. I mean, I think it's the boomers that, if you want to talk about soft people, I mean, look, the GWAT generation, like these guys fought on multiple deployments. These guys spent years deployed. Like in the past, maybe you would get drafted because that was a thing back then, and you might do 1 or 2 deployments. I think they called them tours of duty back then, and then like that's it. Well, there was no draft in Iraq or Afghanistan, so it was the same group of people that were doing these deployments back to back, and they really fought the whole thing for almost 20 years now. So I think really what that generation did is incredible, and I would have liked to have been part of that, and kind of felt like I missed out. So yeah, I mean, it's it's kind of funny because sometimes people say, sort of as a joke, or maybe they say it's serious, that hey, if a war pops off, you get called back. Like I'm going to view that as some sort of bad thing. I mean, for some people, yeah, it might disrupt their family situation or whatnot. But for me, I mean, no, I mean, this is something that I was looking for. And I think some people don't they don't quite get it when I say that. And that's fine because everyone's got their own values. But if you clicked on this video for this long, you probably want to be around a peer group that does get it. And if you join, you will find that here. You will find that here. So whether it's like you do it for one stint or you stay in for 20 years, I mean, I've made some lifelong friendships from this. I do want to talk about, though, the comments that you may get from others, and it turns out this wasn't really nearly as big of a deal as I thought it would be. I think I built up way too much in my head what might people think of this, me going away from that upper middle class sort of default modernity path. Honestly, okay, just honestly, I did have a few sort of hater comments from it, but most was were either supportive or it was just curiosity. So I think at least myself and maybe others, like you build up so much in your head, hey, what might people think? And then the reality is like they're not even thinking about you. Like you're worrying so much about like, hey, what might people say or what might people do? And the reality is like they're worried about themselves. Like they have their own stuff going on. So, get so caught up, oh, well, maybe they won't like the military. Dude, like they're worried about their own stuff. Like they don't even care. So like the couple of hater comments I got, I mean, frankly, I wasn't really worried about these people anyway. Kind of made a lot of progress in that time, just kind of distancing myself from negative people. And hey, honestly, this might be a good forcing function for you too, to get away from negative people that, don't necessarily see eye to eye with you, and people that, hey, maybe we don't agree on everything, but like at least we can respect each other's different views. And if they can't, look, you should move on from them. Like they're not going to help you out. But yeah, I think I built up way too much in my head what might people think, and the reality is like they don't even care. Like they're worried about their own career, they're worried about their own lives. It wasn't even relevant. So don't build this up too much in your head about what people might think, because the reality is like they're not even thinking about you in the first place. So look, the value that I've gotten out of this has been huge. Like there have been just so many lessons from this, like so many experiences that have been fun, so many that have sucked too. But I've listened from them too. Got a lot of feedback from mentors, from commanders, and some of it was harsh feedback, but it was feedback that I needed. It's what I needed to grow. I could do a whole another podcast on like some of the lessons that I learned, like going through just basic to OCS to engineer Bullock to PL time on. I mean, there's so much stuff I would have done different. Like there's a lot that I think we all have stuff that we wish we could have done different in, say, OCS or Bullock or PL time, like earlier on like that. But I really have a lot of things that I wish I did different, and fortunately you learn from these lessons. But the point is, like, these were not lessons I was getting in the corporate world. Like these were not lessons that I was getting in the finance world. And it comes down to one big thing. I was not getting leadership experience then. And you could read all the books. You could read all the Dale Carnegie. You could read, you could read all the books. You could read all the Harvard Business Review articles. But until you're actually in that position, you just don't get it. And a lot of the so-called leadership lessons that I kind of picked up from others in the corporate world, just seeing how other leaders would do their thing, they weren't good lessons. They were not good lessons. I could do a whole podcast on this, but look, you don't want to be Ari Gold. You just think you want to be Ari Gold. So Ari Gold, he's a character from Entourage. That was one of my favorite TV shows in the 2000s, a show on HBO. So Ari Gold is this high-powered talent agent in Hollywood. So he's like this very like Gordon Gekko, like badass business figure. He's an entertaining character, and he's kind of refreshing because, especially if you're in a very sterile, lifeless, dull corporate environment where everybody's talking in HR speak, like per my last email, and they like CC the whole office. Okay, he's kind of refreshing because he tells it like it is, but you don't want to be Ari Gold. Like seriously, like the great leaders I've had, they're guys that, I mean, they know how to lay down the law if they have to, but like they're not abrasive just for the sake of being abrasive. Like Ari Gold doesn't know how to tone it down, and you can't do that. Like you got to be able to know how to dial it back too. Otherwise, you're going to destroy your business. Like I might start talking about some of the bad things that I've seen in the finance industry. There's a company I was at that this company basically no longer exists anymore because, well, the leadership in charge pretty much they ran everyone good out of the company. Like if you want to have a toxic culture like that, people are going to leave. And I'll be honest, there have been some leaders in the military that I've seen that are, they could use some work, but by and large, when you're in that position where you have people that you are accountable for, where in the corporate world, I mean, they're really not. You're just a number in the machine. It changes you, and it changed me, and I feel like I'm a much more well-rounded person from it, and I'm grateful for those experiences. And when I go back in the business world at some point, I'm definitely going to take those with me. So this went over a lot. I'm not trying to sell anyone necessarily on the military because it is a big decision. But from a lot of these calls that I had with people, I think more than just information about the military, they wanted someone to just tell them that this is normal, that this is okay. And again, like who is really to say like what a normal life is or not? Like I would suggest too, like what is so great about just buying maybe slightly more Amazon products or watching like a few more Netflix shows? I mean, you don't have to do that. If you want to counter me with saying, well, I got this great nonprofit group involved in, okay, great. I mean, go do that. I mean, that's awesome. But like do something. Do something. It doesn't have to be the military. It doesn't have to be, whatever, but like just do something. Don't just settle on doing things because that's what everyone out of college did or everyone from back in the day did. It's not necessarily that they have bad intentions from it. It just, that's all they know. Okay. So I might be the first person you talk to that left finance to do this, but I'm objectively not the only one. I mean, in my OCS class, we had people who they had business backgrounds too. A lot also were NCOs that want to make the jump to the officer side, but we only really had a couple people that were really fresh out of college. The most were people like myself that were career switchers or people already in the military that want to make the jump to the officer side. So even if you're not even if you're the only one out of your peer group that's done this before, you're objectively not the only one that's done this. There's been millions of people that join the military at some point. You don't have to do it forever. Like you can go back to the business world at some point later on too. And don't feel that because you busted your ass to get into XYZ investment banking firm, that it's game over if you leave. Like you can go back. You can go back. Like there's other firms you can work for. So hope this is informative. I'm going to put out a list probably on my Substack on all the platforms that I'm going to be on because I am trying to branch out more than just YouTube. So all the main platforms. So think the Spotify's, that's going to be the first priority. And then we'll branch out from there. But it's my first podcast. So hope you enjoyed it. And thanks for tuning in. I'm out.